Hello, and welcome back to the Treasures of the Household Cavalry, the video podcast series that looks at some of the remarkable items in the Household Cavalry's collection. I ended the 2020 series with Kaiser Wilhelm II's silver and enamel cigarette case, which he'd given to the Royal Dragoons following his appointment as their colonel in 1894. I'm starting the 2021 series with another gift of silver, albeit one given by Lord ZETLAND in 1874 after he'd left the regiment. The practice whereby officers commemorated their service with a gift of silver, or in the case of the 2nd Life Guards, silver gilt, started in the 18th century and coincided with the establishment of permanent officers' messes within the barracks. Until 1922, there were 3 such household cavalry messes, one for each regiment. 2 were in London, at Hyde Park Barracks shown here at the top left, and Regent's Park Barracks shown at the top right, and 1 was at Cumbermere Barracks in Windsor. On the rather fraught amalgamation of the 1st and 2nd Life Guards in 1922, Regent's Park Barracks was relinquished, and much of the 2nd Life Guards silver was sold or removed by the heirs of the original donors, including a large service of silver gilt known as the Galway plate. Fortunately, much of the silver that was offered for sale was acquired by the Life Guards NCO's mess, and so didn't leave the newly amalgamated regiment. In the closing years of my own service with the Life Guards, I was, amongst other things, responsible for the officers' mess silver, some of which was rather obviously in need of repair. At the time, the regiment was based at Lothian Barracks in Detmold, West Germany. That's the officers' mess at the top left of the slide. And so I arranged for one of the directors of Tessier, the regiment's silversmiths, to fly out to make an assessment as to which pieces needed attention. He arrived quite late and went straight to bed. Following morning, I took the Tessier director into breakfast in the dining room, which, as was the custom at the time, was laid out with cereals, fruit juice, coffee and tea on a sideboard. Unlike our Colonel-in-Chief, whose cornflakes are reputedly dispensed from a Tupperware box, the Life Guard cereals were, as always, in a silver soup tureen. Because of lockdown, I don't have a picture of this particular piece of silverware, but here is a similar one. "My God!" exclaimed the man from Tessier when he went to help himself to Mr. Kellogg's best-known product. "What on earth are cornflakes doing in such a valuable piece of Paul's store?" By way of explanation, for those of you not versed in antique silver, Paul's store is considered to be one of the greatest English silversmiths of all time, and his work is highly collected. Fortunately for the Life Guards, the soup tureen is not our only piece of store's work, for it was he who also created the 2 pairs of priceless silver kettle drums presented to the 1st and 2nd Life Guards by King William IV. The 2nd Life Guards drums, shown in the top right, are still used on parade today, whilst the 1st are in the museum. Not surprisingly, by lunchtime that day, the Life Guards cornflakes had been moved into a less valuable piece of silver, and the Paul Store soup tureen became one of the centerpieces in use on the dining room table. Which brings me back to the piece of silver given to the Blues in 1874 by the then Earl, later Marquis of Zetland, who, as plain Lawrence Dundas, had purchased a commission in the Blues in 1866. By all accounts, although much given to wearing his regiment's uniform around London, Dundas didn't spend a lot of time with the regiment. In fact, he resigned his commission in 1872 and left without presenting a gift to the mess. It was only following the death of his uncle in 1873, that's the uncle on the left, when Dundas became Earl of Zetland and a very rich man, that he was reminded that he hadn't given the Blues a memento of his service, and, somewhat under pressure, he decided to rectify the omission. The manner of his gift was, however, offhand, to say the least. "Oh, buy a piece of silver and send me the bill," he told his former brother officers. The Blues took him at his word and commissioned a massive centrepiece. Made by Hunt and Roskell, it's so large that it takes 4 men to lift it. The centrepiece, which you can see towards the right of this photo, is so large, in fact, that the Blues dining table had to be specially reinforced to bear the weight. Now housed in the Household Cavalry Museum, the Zetland trophy is still occasionally moved back to the mess for a dinner party. And what, I hear you ask, was the bill for this enormous piece of silver? Well, in 1874 it was £1,000, which, according to the Bank of England's inflation calculator, equates to £114,000 in today's money, although I doubt that it could be copied for less than £250,000. I suspect also that, while his former comrades laughed at their good fortune, even the well-heeled Lord Zetland drew breath at the eye-wateringly large bill. Next week, I'm going to be looking at some curious relics of the Aoka insurgency in Cyprus in the mid-1950s, and I'll be recounting the story of a notorious accidental discharge. In the meantime, stay well and stay safe.